looks like the Rumble feed isn't on. Let me see if I can get that back
Oh,
up.
goodness gracious. Sorry, this is live on Facebook at the moment?
Oh, well, yeah, that's really annoying. Okay, Scott,
Sorry for the technical difficulty.
keep
Ted is
talking.
going to be going through it because nothing is more interesting than seeing frustrated old men work on computers.
Yes, indeed.
I can remember my dad calling me. Have you ever tried to walk an 80-year-old through a technical problem on the computer? Something so basic, so simple. And he'd always call me at work. So, and at the time, I did not have an office. We shared a bullpen with the rest of the editorial page staff. And it would end up with me going, no, okay, look for an icon. What the hell's an icon? It's a little drawing thingy, little thing. Look for one that looks like a camera. It's not here. Dad, I'm looking at the same screen. It's just upper right-hand corner. It's not there on mine. I go, well, it is, but just upper right-hand, the hand you write with. And it ended up with me yelling instructions because my father was losing his hearing at the time. So it made for a joyful memory that
I'm sure it did.
Oh my God. It was just so funny because, seriously, I have trouble and, I didn't grow up with computers like my kids did. Your kid did, but I did grow up thinking about computers and kind of conversant with them, got to the point where I could actually do some very nominal programming on the early Macs and stuff. And, now I'm lost and my son has to walk me through it. And I go to my oldest, who's a programmer. He's a DevOps guy. And I figure he's just like a genius. He's a computer genius because he does it for a living, Ted. He's got to be a genius, right? He finds this stuff out. I ask him a question. Spen, I'm doing this and this isn't working. He says, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, let me look into that. And he looks at his phone. Ted, he's Googling it. He's doing what I would be doing if I was, an IQ above room temperature. But he, anyway, so that's old men and computers. Is the Rumble feed going?
Appears to be up now. So
okay, great.
I think
so. Hello, Rumblers. What are they called?
Rumblers.
That's
those who name. Rumble.
Let's get ready to rumble. He's still around and still doing that shtick.
Is he that guy?
Yeah. And someone, I think it was GQ or someone years ago did a profile of him. In the first graph or two, it's hilarious. It says, when you first meet him, you are not surprised by the overwhelming amount of cologne he's wearing. Because he does. He has the hair product and the very tight face. And
it's Botox. Like that producer guy who you always see at the beginning of Jeopardy with the jacket. I forget his name, but he's like been there forever. He's behind the scenes, but he's got the silk jacket, like the Broadway silk jacket.
Oh my.
Yeah.
You know what? There's half of me that wants to be that guy. You know what? I'm coming up on my 66th birthday. And it's like, I promised myself when I turned 60, I'd buy bright yellow pants because at 60, who cares? Seriously, who cares?
But your own eyes might burn out.
Well, I don't have to see them as much as, say, Janine or my friends.
No one wants
your eyes would burn out.
On the other hand, I guess the bright yellow pants would match the dribbling pee going down your leg.
What hides it? It masks it. Yeah, right. Exactly.
It's like the reason that New Yorkers all wear black because the city is filthy and grimy.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Really? That's the reason?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's my theory. I think it's a theory that is widely shared. I mean, it's just easier. I mean, the city is dirty. I mean, you can't. I mean, if you dress like Tom Wolfe or Mark Twain, all in white, it's going to be a lot of maintenance for your clothes. I mean, you're just like sitting down on the wrong subway seat away from disaster. So, as opposed to the far less appealing New Yorker approach of sitting on whatever and bringing it home and sitting on your sofa with it. Because
you done that?
What?
Have you done that?
Well, you don't come home with. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm just saying you don't if you don't notice that you sat on a dog turd.
Yeah. Well, of course. Yeah, you don't do it on purpose unless you're a psycho.
I have a lot of gross New York stories, but one of my grossest was back in the payphone days.
Oh yes, please.
I don't know why it's important to mention that it was on the Upper East Side, but it was. And I didn't look at the phone before I put it on my ear, and someone had put a turd there.
Oh God.
For what mammal originated this turd, but a turd, and I smushed it into my ear. So that was really great. Fortunately, there was a diner with a very friendly guy who I just pointed, and he's like, restrooms this way. And he had very hot water in there. And like, but even so, I don't think I felt clean for weeks. I mean,
I would say
my 4 times, 5 times a day.
I would be digging in my, I'm not proud of this, but I swear my first reaction would be for at least 3 weeks, I'd be going like this every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I was totally like that. I think that's not even like a Scott or Ted thing. I think that's just a human thing. Anyone would just absolutely freak out. So
did you get the nickname Turdier for a while, or?
I grew into the nickname.
They called me that before the phone incident. I don't know.
Yeah, but then I was like, I'm moving into it.
You're leaning into it.
Yeah. It seemed like the right thing to do at the time.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
okay.
Truly a debased moment, Yeah. I was like, oh God.
You live in NYC. Someone made the effort. I'm sorry. We're actually talk about politics and this stuff.
Yeah. We have important stuff to talk about, the future of the republic. But yes, go ahead.
But real quick, I'm just thinking I'm always amazed. Someone thought this through. Someone went phone.
I'll show them.
Yeah. I mean, whatever offense society foisted on this poor person, they were going to get even by doing this.
That's true. No, I mean, I often think about things like that. Like, so, it's sort of like, well, you mentioned yellow pants. It's sort of like you've seen certain articles of clothing and you're like, so many steps went to this poor sartorial choice, right? Like, first of all, you went to the store, and in a consumer society with a myriad of choices, you decided that this was the garment you were going to purchase. Then you brought it home and you didn't think better of it and you kept it. And then that morning, of all the choices you had to wear, which presumably were quite a few because you're an American, and we have cheap clothes, you were like, this is the one. I'm going to wear my Green Bay Packers shirt today. This is the one. I'm wearing it. It's like
with the yellow pants.
With the yellow pants, and like, and it's like, and I'm always like, it's to me like really mysterious. It's sort of like I don't understand certain things, like the baseball caps. You know how people have the baseball caps that have the tip is all frayed and old.
Yeah, you can buy it pre-frayed.
What?
You can buy it that way.
It's like distressed jeans.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I see that, I think hobo.
Really?
Riding that train high on cocaine. Yeah,
but you don't. Here's the thing.
Why would okay? You watch sports. Okay, what is the what? Seriously, please. Well, yeah, but that's you wear unusual sports clothes, like obscure minor league teams and stuff like that, and that's cool. Our mutual friend Ruben Bowling, the cartoonist, does that too. But what is the purpose of the frayed baseball cap?
Because for those of us who wear caps, you don't wear hats, so you're not a hat dude.
No, I was when I was a kid, though. I used to wear baseball caps all the time.
And then you grew up. So you're saying it's childish, is what you're saying.
Well, no, that's true, but that is childish. But it's not my point. I have worn a hat.
If you wear a cap and you have a beloved cap, it gets worn, and you wear it a lot, and that's what that's supposed to show. Is that you love
beloved hat is supposed to go to the great haberdashery in the sky, never
beloved
to be
trash can
off to the Fresh Kills garbage dump here in New York City.
I'm going to take it one step. I know we are going to get to politics, folks. I swear to God. But the thing about the yellow pants and the shirt and the style and everything else, I'm going to take it a few steps further back, Ted, is that you and I, growing up in capitalism America and capitalism world, everything that you have, everything you see in the background here, everything you see behind Ted, everything. There was a committee, a group of adults met and created things like the Pope Francis statue. There was a business meeting that created that, which is kind of cool, which I love. But here I have a glow in the dark moon.
I imagine someone working at the boss at the factory, like Isabella, you're falling behind on your on your Il Papa statues. Hurry up, and you will receive no penance from me.
I'm just trying to look at. I mean, I've got so many cheesy, dumb things that but grown up human beings, Homo sapiens in the 21st century, sat around a table and looked at. You know what we need? We need an eraser that looks like a piece of pizza. Everyone good with that?
It survived all these steps to be made into actually be produced from concept to finish. That's why I find Shark Tank completely fascinating, because sometimes you're just like, some of the products that are pitched, you're like, I can't believe this doesn't exist already. This is amazing. It should have always existed. Those are the best in my view. And then there's the ones where you're just like, okay, so this solves a non-existent problem. Like there was some contraption that they were pitching. I don't remember if they got the deal, but it was a thing to hold your shampoo bottles or other bottles of things that are sticky upside down when they're toward the end,
Yeah.
And I was like, you don't have like a wall you can just lean it against like everyone else does?
Yeah, we have the little thing hanging off the spigot the water comes out of, and the basket thing. It has the loofahs and all that stuff. And
sure,
yeah, you just turn it, you just put it back upside down.
Yeah, you have the other ones hold it up.
It's just that simple. There you go.
it's that, but it's like, no, it's like this person was like, they invested a lot of their own money to develop this, gadget. And I'm like, okay. But on the other hand, then there's gadgets where I'm like, it sounds stupid, but like back in the days of CDs, those were compact discs, kids. There was a device. They were usually, almost always, they had and LPs. They were shrink wrapped, and it was really hard to open them with your nail.
Yes.
And so you would like use your nail, but sometimes, often the cardboard would then slip under your nail, and you'd have like bloody nail, right? So there was a contraption that you could buy like at the record store for like 25 cents, and had a little blade in there, and you just went zip. And if you bought a lot of records, that was a nice contraption to have. So,
God,
a lot of people might have looked at that and thought that was stupid.
But you mentioned CDs. We have two cars. One is because we're Americans and it's what we do. One is the car we never use. It's a Fit. It's pretty much was built at the Bic lighter factory because it's a disposable car. I mean, it really is.
There was once I heard tell of a Fit demolition derby just for Fits.
I think that's called driving it off the lot. It's already, if it's not a great car, but it's a great second car. Traffic. But we hadn't run it in a while, so I said I'm going to run it. But it has a CD player, Ted. And I went, and our
CD player,
our stacks of CDs are behind things now. I literally had to move things to look. And oh my God, the nostalgia of looking at, if you're listening to this and you're of a certain age, go to your CD collection, and you will have this swelling of nostalgia and of great love and longing. And I'm going,
as you know, Scott, having been to Chateau Clovis, you know that I have that experience of nostalgia each and every day.
You do, but you never gave it up. I bowed to our digital masters, and all hail our new robot overlords. So and our new cars don't come with CD players.
No, they don't.
They can
you
plug
can
into
get
your
one.
phone.
You can install one, but it's not the same.
Well, I know, but you can also have your phone and just say play Asia by Steely Dan, and there you go. But my God, Ted, it was just I was going for just a short jaunt. I was just going to go meet someone for lunch about 1.5 miles from my house. And I probably should have walked, but you can't walk in Alabama, by the way, or they will kill you. No, you'll be picked up and you'll be sent to the camps. You'll be sent to Gitmo and then deported to Nicaragua.
Migrants.
Anyway, okay. I missed my CDs. I missed going to the car. You had a long car trip and you had to pick Janine would pick 5 CDs. I pick 5 CDs. And then that was the car trip. Okay, we've already listened all the way through this, so let's listen to this. Anyway,
the main thing is what this is really about. We could do an entire show about music. I wish we could play music on these things, but we can't because of the copyright issues. But
you can 30 seconds, can't you? I thought you could.
I don't think that's true, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you'll get like blocked off YouTube or whatever. Probably Rumble as well. But it anyway, this is really about like how music was consumed when you and I were growing up. It was the age of the album. And like now we're back to the age of the single, right? Everybody's, basically if you're listening to Spotify, Pandora, whatever, it's effectively 45, back to the old 45, right? But the idea of like, listening to an artist's vision over the course of, say, anywhere from 40 to 70 minutes, is a different experience, not necessarily superior, but I would say it's a deeper experience, to listen to, say, 40 straight minutes of the Cars than it is to listen to one Cars song and then, a Buzzcock song, then a Gregorian chant and whatever.
Well, that's the other thing, is that Spotify has a virtual DJ, which will take what you've been playing and make it a playlist.
Mm-hmm.
And you just described, I don't know, we were listening to, Janine and I were listening to rap or something. So her virtual DJ was saying, here's something for Janine, because she spells her name oddly. And
does it have like that kind of voice?
It has a voice that's supposed to be like, it sounds like a soft African-American DJ voice. It's very interesting. But what's interesting is what it will play is like, so this rap will come on, and then, as you say, I listen to ambient space music. So hey,
you're totally like, you're totally like that. It could be Gregorian chant followed by Judas Priest.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Well, you know who's like you is like BBC Radio in London.
Is it?
Yeah, it's very esoteric. I mean, it's totally like, and you just listened to 96 Tears by Question Mark and the Mysterians, and now let's go to Lilliput, and after that we're going to go to the Real Slim Shady. I mean, it's like that. It's actually awesome.
I love stuff like that. There's a radio station, that was when we lived in Grand Rapids. It was from the small college there, and the kids played whatever they wanted to play, literally whatever they wanted to play. So you'd have the Sex Pistols followed by the national anthem of Estonia. It was just
awesome.
Weird.
That's
awesome.
So cool. It's so cool. Yeah, it's so.
And that's the kind of freedom that we want to hold on to. But can we, Ted?
Well,
it's
that's
1933.
an segue, belatedly.
It's a horrible segue. It's the worst segue in the
okay, well, I'm your friend, so I try not to disappoint you. So basically the question here is, look, so do we have there's a lot going on this week, right? You and I have been on like Trump. We don't suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, but you and I have definitely been cognizant of this president's authoritarian impulses for quite some time, to the point where we predicted January 6th or something like it months before it happened. And it wasn't like an off glance on a tweet. We talked about it repeatedly. We podcasted.
I want to interrupt real quick and say Ted actually predicted not January 6th. I eventually came to his way of thinking, but
it didn't take long.
Way ahead.
But you didn't come. You weren't far behind me, really. You're being too modest. But anyway, the thing is, there's so much going on right now. So Trump is repeatedly talking about how he ought to run for a third term. At CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee meeting in Washington this past weekend, an official third term project was announced and is raising money and has swag and everything. He jokingly called himself the king on social media and quoted Napoleon, who said, "He who saves his country does not violate any law." That seems to be like an indication that he plans to ignore unfavorable Supreme Court rulings on his numerous executive orders, some of which obviously are unconstitutional. He recently purged, he seems to be purging the military. He just fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The excuse is that he's too woke. The dog whistle is that he's too black. But the truth is he's being replaced by a MAGA loyalist. Two other top military officers are out. All the JAGs are out. The judge advocate generals, who are basically all the military lawyers who interpret the the code of military conduct. So we know from history that the military, as we saw in the Soviet Union and other places, or I should say Russia at the time, is very key to any kind of successful coup d'etat or revolution. You don't need them to start, but you need them to finish it. And Trump has a strong incentive to remain in office. He becomes vulnerable to criminal charges again if he leaves office as scheduled on January 20th, 2029. He gets, unless he dies first, everything could start up again, right? So, the question is, now, on the other hand, he did leave on January 20th, 2021. He slunk out of town without, doing any of the niceties like attending Biden's inauguration or anything like that. And he never acknowledged that he had lost the election fair and square, quite to the contrary. Still hasn't. So, unfortunately, we are the nature of Trump's approach to the presidency and his personality forces us to read tea leaves. He's not transparent. He sends lots of conflicting signals. We kind of don't know what to make of him. So, without suffering from like liberal democratic, ridiculous, Donald Trump is a Nazi, all that stuff is ridiculous. And, especially if that was all true, if Democrats really believed that, they'd be behaving very differently. They would be protesting. They would be voting against his cabinet picks instead of voting for them, like Marco Rubio. So there's a lot to unpack. And look, normally, as you know, and as people who watch this podcast know, I'm usually pretty certain about my opinions. But I'm not. In this case, I don't know what to expect. I really just don't. How about you?
I'm in this world and in this environment of absolute certainty, we're going to give you two guys who are brave enough to say, we don't know.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said for that. I don't know where this is going. I just read an interesting article this morning written by somebody who worked for Trump, still liked him, but said, you have to understand Donald Trump's motivations. They're not what they appear to be. They're always personal, and it's always based on getting what he wants. Right. They talk about his bankruptcies and the fact that he never entered into a contract that he would say behind, after his sign. He knew he could wiggle out of it, and wiggled out of many contracts he did.
He also defaulted a lot too.
And his obsession with Panama doesn't come from the Panama Canal or 1970s when Jimmy Carter, then President Carter, gave the canal to the Panamanian government, but rather the Panamanian government shot down Trump Towers that he had planned to build there. This is not so, and so it goes like that, which is different from 1933 in the sense that Hitler and the Nazis came in with the express purpose of changing the government. The Aryan theology, all of that was in place. It wasn't like lurking in the background. It was front and center. So are we looking at 1933? Let's look at comparisons, and then let's look at what non-comparisons. The comparison is we have weak opposition right now, or the Trump administration and the Republicans. We had a podcast talking about Minority Leader Jeffries saying, what are you going to do when talking about how's opposition to MAGA movements in both the Republicans in the House and the Senate, and of course in the White House. There are physical threats. There's more and more reports now, Ted, that some congressmen and senators genuinely fear for their physical safety and have been told behind closed doors that they are physically in danger if they don't go along with this agenda. And they're, like most people, they can go along with 80% of an agenda, but there's 20% they disagree with, and they can vote. And there's always been mechanisms in our real world politic where that could be accommodated. If, there's trade-offs and so on. That's not allowed in MAGA world. Like you said, talking about a third term, talking about whether or not they will ignore Supreme Court or other judicial decisions striking down the executive orders. Additionally, this place has been set for a long time, Ted. And mostly Democrats, I'm afraid, have been ceding more and more power over the last two and a half decades to the executive branch, to the point where we now have this, and it's being used against them. And that's always been your argument. It's always been my argument about when your guys in power, yeah, give them all the power in the world. Yeah. And you and I would both be the few cartoonists in the world saying, don't do it, because guess what? You're not going to be in power forever. Yes, right. Absolutely. And
it's a lesson that particularly Democrats seem to have to learn over and over again.
Yeah, there are reasons the founding fathers saw that you had to have these separations of powers, and that the main point of governing is to dilute the other person's power. I mean, that's it.
Right.
Alexander Hamilton had a great line, and I'm going to paraphrase it and butcher it terribly, but something to the effect of, the democracy will be safe if you have the power of the purse strings in one branch of government and the power of the military in the other. But now, because the commander in chief and the executive, who was structured to be the head of the armed forces, now has more and more, and looks like, if things continue, absolute power of the purse strings. No congressman has stepped up. No senator has stepped up and said, you can't take our power away. Because going back to my point that some of them are reporting that they feel that there's a physical threat against them if they do. Well, that smells like 1933 in large part. Ted, what would you say is not 1933?
Well,
excuse me.
That's a good question, right? I mean, so, I'm thinking there were a lot of the Nazi seizure of power took place in a number of steps. And really, I'd say the culmination was the passing of something called the Enabling Act by the Reichstag. And the Enabling Act was, I believe, passed in late 1933 or early 1934. And basically what it was is it turned the German parliament into a rubber stamp organ of the Fuhrer. And so it basically said that anything that Hitler proposes has the force of law. Hitler says it, like in other words, the equivalent of an executive order in the United States. Then the Reichstag, technically, it's still under the Weimar Constitution legal, because of the Enabling Act, we automatically approve of it. It is passed. So it's like technically legal, right? Or I should say it's legalistic. It's not really legal. Because it doesn't follow the spirit of the Weimar Constitution. But, the Nazis were careful to try to have that veneer of legality, particularly at the beginning.
That's important to point out.
So I think, when that passed, it was a really dramatic moment when the Reichstag was voted to pass the Enabling Act. The socialist deputies, those who had not already been bundled off to Buchenwald concentration camp, and the communist deputies voted no and argued against it. But the atmosphere of menace was palpable, because surrounding the Reichstag were the members of the SA and the SS parading and making noise and shouting specific threats against socialist left-wing deputies, and saying, if you don't do the right thing, we're waiting out here and we're going to kill you. And they could hear it inside. So that specific, right now, there might, I've been reading even in the New York Times, it's kind of remarkable. Some Democratic congressmen are saying there's nothing we can do. We are physically afraid for our lives if we resist Trump in any active way. Okay, that's a vague threat. Okay, that's you think that maybe someone might do something, but that's not a palpable, actual threat like the one that was faced by the German parliamentarians in the early 1930s. So that's different. A lot of it is in the fevered imagination and wussitude of a Democratic congressman and some Republican congressmen as well. So that's different. And in a way, but I mean, the other thing is that the seizure of power hasn't gone all the way to the local level. There's a famous book that I read in college called The Nazi Seizure of Power. It's a classic. It talks about the experience of one town in northern Germany and how Nazism came to that town. And the important thing to understand is how when Nazism came to Germany, it wasn't just like in Berlin, top down all the way. I mean, that was a huge element of it. But the Nazi Party was in every part of the country, and at a local level, they agitated and they bullied. Even like, for example, in this town, which I think was called Northeim, they had city council meetings where the old mayor was like basically bullied into quitting, even though he had won re-election, fair and square. And the Nazis were like, well, it's a new world and you got to do things our way. We don't have that here. I mean, the House of Representatives is 49% Democratic right now. The Senate. I mean, and forget about like state. You think the California State Assembly is like is Republican or like in MAGA land? It's not, right? So or the New York State or the New York State Assembly, like no. So I think that's different. Also, the control of the media. I mean, certainly there's MAGA influence on tech. We saw the Washington Post and the LA Times decide to change their endorsements due to some bullying and threats. But still, writ large, the New York Times is still in the pocket of, it's still a Democratic organ, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the bottom line is that that MAGA and Trump don't have nearly as much power or force of will as Hitler and the Nazis did in the 30s. On the other hand, the resistance that was, the KPD and the SPD, the two left-wing parties, the two big ones in Germany, they were powerful organizations. They each had a military wing. They would have street clashes with the Nazi thugs in the SA and the SS. They were armed. They'd go out and shoot each other in the streets. I mean, so, when we talk about resistance, here you're talking about sending a firmly worded tweet. There, people were actually getting their heads broken, and so there was more resistance too. There was just more going on both sides of issues. But that said, you brought up today's topic was your suggestion, and you focused on the military, the reorganization of the military.
Yeah.
And when you brought it up, it did occur to me immediately. I went to historical precedent, and I just thought, that's shady. It's really shady.
It's deeply disturbing. It should be to anyone who's familiar with recent history and also, world history. The dismissal of officials, heads of the Joint Chiefs, head of the Navy, I think it was. He's also just recently dismissed. It was a woman. You can't have that. And replacing them with dragging some old guy out of retirement to be the head of the Joint Chiefs. Going back to January 6th, 2021, the Joint Chiefs made it abundantly clear right out of the chute, before any other hijinks ensued, that they were not going to be a part of this. The little confab he had there in front of the Capitol, sending his minions over there. They made it abundantly clear, apparently, but especially behind closed doors and behind back channels, in no way, shape, or form is the Army going to participate in this. And I think he's looking at that going, well, that, screw them. I'm going to have, honorable, order abiding, we're just following order.
Upset on the other side for their refusal to crack down on Black Lives Matter. Remember, that was a big thing too. He wanted the military to be deployed against anti-police brutality protesters, and they said they wouldn't.
Well, and that's exactly right. So he wants a hierarchy in the armed forces that will do his bidding, and he can say, come to, they're not supposed to, use the force against American citizens, which is, a good thing. I think we can all agree on this one, but he wants to come in and use it against protests, against, cleaning up cities. He's already sent National Guard down to the border. He's also using them to helping ICE round up undocumented workers. So, going forward, this is the positioning of these pieces, and he's doing it at a breakneck speed. You and I both are aware when Hitler ascended to power and was named chancellor, he and his loyalists in the Reichstag moved very quickly to diminish, erode, and effectively eradicate democratic institutions, and the firewalls and all the other governors that are in position to take care of and prevent abuse of power. Well, this seems to be a breakneck speed of, breaking down those barriers. And is this 1933? Not literally. What's the old line, Ted? History doesn't repeat itself; it echoes.
It rhymes.
It rhymes, and this rhymes with it, but it does not exactly it. And I think Trump is looking at how can I conjure, going back to nothing that he says he's offended by is what he's offended by. He's looking at personal affronts. He's looking at what the army did not allow him to do in 2021. And he's looking at, I mentioned Panama, about that Panamanian government did not allow him to build his towers. That's what motivates this guy. So a congealing power, he felt embarrassed and emasculated by the House and Senate when he first ascended to office in 2017. He's going to take care of that. He's emasculated them. Now that they are, I don't know that they serve much of a purpose. It's answering the question, is this 1933? It's not it exactly, but it sure rhymes with it. Do you disagree?
I think there's certain things that do and certain things that don't. I think it boils down to, we don't really know what Trump's after. I mean, we can only speculate. I mean, it seems to me like, I would think that he, like any president, would want to be remembered fondly. He knows he's at the end of his life. He knows that, I think he's been insulted and diminished by elites ever since he was young, and starting out as a business person in New York. And I think he probably thinks this is his opportunity to, I think he would like to be 100 years from now, like revered as like one of the greats, like Lincoln, FDR, Washington. And I think so. He knows he has to do that. He has to do some big things, and he has to do some unusual things. I mean, let's face it. Kind of like in the same way that, Hitler built the Autobahn, Trump's doing some good things. I mean, reaching out to Russia to try to bring a conclusion to the Ukraine war, which, like it was just grinding on. It was just going to kill people and waste more money and destroy more buildings. And that's all it was going to do. That's great. There's all sorts of, I mean, even the idea of the Doge $5,000 check that each American might get. Part of me thought, okay, that's dumb, or it should be used to pay down the deficit. But then part of me thought, the PPP payments under Biden, they did a lot of good for the economy. I knew lots of people who were able to pay off credit card debts that had been haunting them for years. It got them, sort of on their feet again. $5,000 is a lot of money for most Americans. And so I'm just saying that, like, it's a mixed bag, but it was for Trump. I mean, for Hitler too. Hitler did some really brilliant stuff with the economy. He reduced unemployment. He basically invented the idea of the treasury bond, which raised all sorts of money that the government wouldn't have otherwise been able to get to finance infrastructure rebuilding. And I think you're going to see Trump. What Trump is doing is he appears to be like co-opting some of the greatest hits of the left, like pacifism, anti-war, putting the country first, economic nationalism, things that the Democrats have abdicated. And that's kind of brilliant. But this is all a way of saying, it's a complicated way, a long-winded way of saying, I don't know. It's like, I think the test we haven't seen the test, right? Like, if there were a broad-based anti-Trump protest movement, would he be content to let that play out, or would he try to crush it ruthlessly? We don't know what he would do in terms of the judiciary. If the Supreme Court tells him there's certain things he can't do, like mass deportations are happening at a very slow pace compared to what he wanted. If the Supreme Court just like gets in the way, is he just going to ignore them? Well, that's a constitutional crisis by definition. People are talking about, well,
Yeah.
we're in a constitutional crisis now. No, we're not.
Not
Right
yet.
now, he's just issuing a blizzard of executive orders. I am worried about so many executive orders, just because it's not so much that there are so many executive orders as much as the fact that there's no legislation being offered, right? I mean,
Yeah.
why not? I mean, it's like he has a Republican House and a Republican Senate. That's all you need. Why is he
Well,
not?
there is an omnibus bill that incorporates every MAGA G-spot, wish list item. It's being crafted now. It has no, I mean, so that is being crafted, but in terms of legislation specific to the executive orders to codify them, no. The omnibus bill that's going to come up it's not going to pass. If it passes, we're doomed, because then that says that, because you're going to have, everybody's going to have to be on board for a very sweeping bill that is going to be, as I mentioned, every single MAGA wish list. And it's, not everybody believes that. But that means he's going to have unanimous Republican support. And that's when we come back to, is this 1933? And that's when we will find out if indeed the congressmen and senators feel that they are being physically threatened and have to vote for this bill. Really, I mean, it's underreported because it's got math involved, and so Americans' eyes glaze over like that, and they are unable to comprehend it. But this overriding bill, is going to be the test of whether or not the legislature, in any way, shape, or form, will fulfill its duty as a third branch of the American government, or is it now just a rubber stamp? So we're going to know this, and all of this is going to happen within, like I said, 6 months of the Nazis ascending to power in 1933. All of this is going to take place within 6 months of Trump being sworn in.
Well, I mean, Trump and the Republicans are well aware of something that apparently Barack Obama did not know, which is that you will never have the political capital that you had on Inauguration Day. It's like driving a car off the lot. Your political capital is ebbing. So it's very smart. I mean, Trump is doing exactly what I would have advised him to do. Come out strong, big, do a lot, do everything you can as quickly as you can, because then you're not going to be able to do anything at all.
Didn't you and I mention this? I mean, how many times have you and I said this in private conversations, interviews, podcasts? When you ascend to office, you've got 100 days.
Yeah.
And there's one guy in the 20th century who did it. And that's FDR.
Right. That's true. Yeah. I mean, I'd say LBJ came close. He got some big things done.
Yeah, he on the back of the assassination of John Kennedy. Yeah, he did. You're right, because it was done in the guise of, we're doing it for John, we're doing it for Jack.
Right. That would be correct. So, I mean, the thing is, what is worrisome is, I don't think. Well, he's not unique, but Trump seems extremely willing to rule without the consent of half the country. He does not care. There's no olive branches being made to liberals or progressives or Democrats. Even among, what's interesting is, even on the issues that they agree with him on, right? He's not, I mean, he's appointed Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. They're both liberals. They're both progressives. He wants to end really truly ending the war in Ukraine. That should be a progressive left-wing agenda item. For some weird reason these days, it's not. Democrats are apparently very cool with trying to prop up a corrupt one-party dictatorship that doesn't hold elections. But and
Ted,
has a lot
Ted,
of
you can't
neo-Nazis
say
in the
that.
government.
That isn't just because it's true doesn't mean you can say it.
That's true. Yeah.
How
these
many
days people are really oh my God, the butthurtedness about poor Zelensky and all that. It's like, oh my God.
Where's that coming from, by the way? Because I read
it's propaganda.
That Trump wrongly said that he is a dictator, or that he's gotten rid of democratic institutions in Ukraine. And listen, I mean, it's true. They haven't had elections.
Right. And I love the excuse. Like, and then what's hilarious, people, well, they can't have elections because they have martial law, and under martial law, you can't have elections. Okay, that's true. But who declared martial law? The guy who would be running in the election, right? So it's like, I can't run. I can't run. My hands are tied by myself. And even though I have the key to my own handcuffs, I'm not going to use that key, because then what? And it's like, you can't hold an election in Ukraine. We don't have all of our territory. Well, the United States didn't have half of its territory in 1864, and we still ran an election. Not to mention, honestly, as Zelensky well knows, if he could snap his fingers and magically reunited, and it feels so good, and have all of Ukraine pre-2014 back, including Crimea, his chances would be worse, because the areas that Russia controls are anti-Zelensky, pro-Russian, pro-Putin. So, like, what's he talking about? Like, so he's worried about having an election, even in the part of the country where he has the best chance of winning.
I'm saying the NPR, as well, wrongly says that he's a dictator, that he's that there aren't that's not a democracy.
And they don't explain it. They just say, like, wrongly. Okay, why is it wrong? Tell us why it's wrong.
Well,
it's like, there's certain phrases that you hear completely. It's like it's never just the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It's the full scale invasion of Ukraine. Always full scale. I don't know. Has there ever been a 3/4 scale invasion? I mean, like, it was never, Iraq's full scale invasion of Kuwait. It was never. Right?
Well, we had a half-scale invasion of Panama years ago. I remember that.
That's kind of true, but we didn't say that. We just said an invasion is an invasion is an invasion.
Yeah, I know.
That's it.
Yeah,
and then there's the whole, like, well, Trump is wrong because he said that Ukraine started the war. Okay, Russia started the war because they invaded. Ukraine provoked the war because they wanted to join NATO. That's what happened. Let's get real. So,
Yeah, but they didn't start it. I think that's what's that?
I just said that. Russia started it. Ukraine provoked it.
So it's a misnomer to say that they started it. Did they provoke? Well,
Yeah, but we know, kind of like, it's schoolyard, right? Like, Scott started it. He said stuff about my mom. I had to punch him in the face.
Well, it's sort of like in hockey or other sports where they have a fight. Usually the guy who throws the first punch doesn't get the penalty. It's the guy who retaliates, who gets, thrown out of the game. Listen, I also want to say, and I wish we hadn't waited this long to say it. Ted and I are not. I mean, I dislike Donald Trump on almost every level. But I have to take that big step backwards and evaluate what he's doing and what he seems to be trying to be doing. So, I mean, Ted touched on it at the beginning of the show, saying that we don't have Trump derangement syndrome. We don't, everything that's wrong in our lives is caused by Donald Trump. No. Although my fit, and
I gotta say, by the way, I'm thrilled to death about, like, Make America Healthy Again. I hope that happens. I
think that's not what I don't think it means.
It may not happen, but I hope it does.
I think it's
a beautiful thing if it does.
It's stupid, Ted, and this is where you and I are going to disagree. I saw the sticker. No, healthy again. What does that mean? Seriously? So we're going to have we're going back to measles.
And get the preservatives out of our food. Like, I would think that you'd approve of certain things, like not allowing SNAP people who get SNAP, which used to be called food stamps, to use it to buy shitty food.
I think people have a right to buy what they want to buy, but that's an
old-fashioned
view. If it's should there be government funds? We can debate that.
Uh-huh.
We're not going to go down that road today.
Can. Yeah, not today.
No. We've already been on for 50 minutes. But I would say that Make America Healthy Again, there's a lot of stuff, like, you can question it. But for instance, fluoride in the water.
All I'm trying to say is that there's stuff to like.
There is stuff to like.
And I will tell you another thing. I'm jealous as hell. Man, I would love to see, like, a left-wing president or a liberal president or a Democratic president be as activist or half as active as Donald Trump. I mean, just think about, like, what a do-nothing someone like Obama or Biden was. I mean, each of those guys only has one major thing to point to. Biden has the infrastructure bill. I've given him credit for it. Obama has Obamacare, deeply flawed, but it's an accomplishment. That's it. I mean, Donald Trump is like, he's out to do everything.
Yeah. No, and you and I as historic nerds look at this and go, wow, this is
it's exciting, right? It's exciting.
It is exciting. And it's also, but what I am hearing is that because of the Doge stuff, a lot of people are getting hurt, and it seems to be unfocused.
Totally. Yeah, it's like, I mean, what you would want, let's say you're really this was the approach to go after government waste, and I'm not at all persuaded that tech douches can solve any problems, but like, but like that said, if they had brought in a team to each agency and each department, they should have shadowed them for like 6 months to study carefully, watch what they do, and then say, okay, suggest this department could go, this department could lose 25% of its staff or whatever. But they came in here. I mean, literally in less than a month, they're in a week, they're firing people willy-nilly and then having up to hire them back because they actually do stuff that people need. I mean,
well, like the funniest story is the guys in charge of the nuclear arsenal who were laid off, and they went, wah, wah.
Yeah, I mean, they don't really know what they really don't seem to know what they're doing.
No, and I do understand, and I see the appeal of taking a sledgehammer to the bureaucracy. It's massive.
Mm-hmm.
It is beyond.
I'm worried about the economic implications, though. I mean, the U.S. government hires a lot of people, and there's also a ripple effect. I mean, every government worker who gets laid off, who wears a suit to work. That's a suit that's not going to need to be dry cleaned anymore. That's a lunch that they're not going to take it down at the deli down the street. There's going to be an economic impact if they really fire a lot of people.
And if you look at the jobs reports that are coming out, the job market is cooling somewhat. Last report, if I'm not mistaken, was about 133,000 new jobs created. Couple that with, and I'm no mathematician, Ted, but if you look at, they've laid off hundreds of thousands of federal workers so far. Well, that's a bigger number than 100,000. It's the impact on the economy, to your point, is going to be significant. And there's nothing in its place that these people can go and work at. So
yeah, that's the thing, is unemployment is low, but hiring is not happening much. Private sector unemployment. So here's the thing: if you're a radical president, which this is, and by the way, that's a compliment from me. But if you're a radical president, it is. If you're a radical president, but the problem with being radical is that there's a big risk entailed. Anything that goes wrong, you own, and you're going to be blamed for. So if there's some government department, like, if let's just say, this coming summer, there's no TSA workers to screen your luggage, and there's huge lines at the airport, and people are missing their flights because of mass layoffs. And that's just an example. Or let's just say everybody's tax refund checks are not received in a timely manner, because the IRS is shorthanded. Or nobody can go to the national parks because there's not enough rangers, and they fired a lot of those forest rangers. Voters are going to get pissed. And it's going to be Trump and the Republican Party who are going to catch hell in the midterms next year.
Well, and one last point I wanted to make, and no one's mentioned it, very few people have. Have you seen the official portraits for the president and the vice president?
Yes, I have.
You're on the computer. You can look it up real quickly. It's pretty easy to find. This time around, the official portrait of Donald Trump looks almost exactly like his mugshot. Mm-hmm. He's glowering at us. He's sternly staring at us. And it reminds me very much of Hitler's official portrait when he became chancellor. It's this kind of like scary uber lord.
Similar angle. Yeah, like chin down, looking.
And if you look at Trump's, it's a weird lighting too. It's a strange looking, and then you see it next to J.D. Vance's, which looks like it was taken at the photo thing at the mall. When it has, well, let's do the patriotic background. Okay, it's that to me projects everything you need to know attitudinally about what we're in for. And we're only are we even 3 months into this thing yet, Ted? God, it feels like
it's only been a month. It's February 23rd. No, and so like that brings us. And we do need to talk about this before we go.
Sure.
Is Trump planning to stay? Do you think it's a credible? I mean, he's being accused of wanting to stay a third term, and it's fair to ask since he keeps talking about it. So is he just trolling, or is he, or is this? I mean, we already talked about how this could happen. I mean,
Yes,
the most obvious is
the Vance Trump ticket.
Yeah, the Medvedev approach, right? Like, so you just have, or he could be like the power behind the throne, but I think he'd want to beat the throne.
Yeah, he likes the throne. He likes the gold. He has a gold toilet. He loves gold. He loves thrones. Okay.
Right. And so, like, I mean, and also, like I said, he has that motivation. He wants to stay judgment proof.
That comes back to the point I made at the top of our
Which this was
here.
another huge fuck up that the Democrats made.
Oh, massive!
They cornered him. Sun Tzu always said, and Machiavelli said, "Do not corner your enemy. Allow your enemy a graceful exit." And that is not what the Democrats did. They cornered him. So he has to stay in office.
Yes, and that
unless they agree to drop all the charges, which they should,
or whoever. The Democrats could say, if we win, we will pardon Donald Trump.
Right. That would be wise. Biden refused to say that.
Well, because they would have lost a huge amount of Democratic votes if they said that. Huge amount. Because they want this guy to be, they want him run naked through the streets, right? They want their pound of flesh. Because this guy has played them every which way for the last, decade.
So does he want to? Does he want a third term?
I think he does, playing to what I touched on in earlier in the segment.
82 when he runs for re-election again.
Yes, he does not want to go to jail. 82-year-olds go to jail. I mean, just like 22-year-olds do sometimes, sure. And especially if you're in a place like New York or someplace where you're not particularly popular. Although you're going to have to explain to me why he cares about the congestion toll coming into New York, why that's an issue for him.
Maybe he doesn't have the $9.
Yeah, God, is it $9?
Yeah, $9 just to enter Manhattan south of 60th Street. One of the things that's really funny about this to me is, and is congestion pricing. Right? Here's the theory. The theory is, it's either going to fail in one of it fails no matter what, right? So let's just say it like people just don't drive into the city anymore. They're like, fuck it, we're taking the subway. Okay. Great, right? That's like less pollution. That's what we all want. Well, then they don't raise any money because they don't collect any tolls. So, and then the subways stay really shitty because this whole idea was that this was going to finance the subways. And
you're kidding.
And improve the subways. Well, the subways would get worse because you'd have increased ridership and no extra money to expand the system and improve it. Or let's just say everyone's like, I can afford $9, no bigs, and they just drive in. Well, then the subway's looking awesome, but the subway's riding empty, and the streets are full of cars. I mean, the whole thing really. I mean, it really kind of doesn't make sense.
It does. No, there's no kind of about it. It doesn't make sense. I'm just curious why Donald J. Trump, the president of the United States, gives a crap about something like that. And I think it's because he sees himself as a New Yorker. And It comes back to your question about the third term, Ted. He doesn't want to be tried. He doesn't want to be convicted. The Supreme Court's decision that the imperial presidency is indeed imperial and that you can't be tried and you're immune as your president of the United States. So yes, is this just blather? Kind of, but it's also they're going to keep pursuing it and see if they can't find a way around the 22nd Amendment. And, you talk about a Vance Trump ticket. That could be the way they do it. They could find some other way. There are very clever people who like to futz with constitutional law.
True.
And they love to debate it and they love to question it. And they can, let's say they find some weird loophole that allows him to run. He runs the campaign. He becomes the Republican nominee for president. And the courts are still and then the election comes and it's a Harris-Trump rematch, and she gets 36% of the vote this time around, and he gets elected. And the Supreme Court rules between the election and the swearing in that indeed he can't do this.
Right.
Do you really think he's going to say, "Oh, okay"?
Well, that's a constitutional crisis.
That's a constitutional crisis of the first water. I mean, that's but they're going
massive.
to try it. They're yes, I'm convinced to my marrow. Yes, this is a real thing. If
And to answer your question, like, why does he care about something as granular and local as congestion pricing in New York City? I agree with you. He still thinks he cares about New York. And look, he has a lot of businesses in New York. I think he's the kind of guy who, he watches cable news and obsessively. And whatever is a major story at any given time, whether it's wildfires in Southern California that he weighed in on, he blamed Governor Newsom for not sending enough water down the pike and all this stuff. He's whatever's in the news, he wants to be at the center of. I think that's really what it boils down to. He's very, he's not the outsourcing type. It's like he likes to take care of things himself. Reminds me a lot of the former dictator of Turkmenistan. He was whose name went by the name Turkmenbashi, leader of all Turkmen, and he was into everything. This guy, he had like a no smoking law, a no pigeons law. He had and he even personally considered every college application in Turkmenistan. If you applied for college, your application crossed the president's desk. Sapir Murat Niyazov was his name. And, I'm sure that his successor does the same thing. The regime, the style of the regime hasn't changed. It was very personal. And as a result, everyone in Turkmenistan was always thinking and talking about Turkmenbashi. And that was a feature, not a bug of the system. Everyone, this might still be a functioning democratic republic, but the fact is everybody's thinking and talking about Donald Trump. What's he up to? What does he want?
Yeah.
What is he thinking? What's he going to do next? I mean, that's what he wants. And it's the nature of a movement as opposed to a party, as we've talked about before. A movement is always highly personal, and a movement is always moving, always on to the next thing. Always. It's exciting. And his rallies are like movement rallies with flags. The Democrats don't have flags. Republicans have flags. They didn't used to, except for the American flag. But,
right.
So things have changed. They have uniforms, right? They have the red hat. Again, Democrats don't have a uniform. They just look like derps.
Well, before I got to ask you, in Turkmenistan, what happened to the pigeons, Ted?
Oh, well, they were killed,
summarily executed.
They were and eaten.
Oof.
But he was funny. I mean, they had Turkmenistan has one of the largest natural gas reserves in the world, and so he was like, quite reasonably, he's like, why should Turkmen people pay for natural gas? We have it coming out of the ground. So he made it for free. He made it free. But the law of unintended consequences, people were like, well, they just leave their stoves on 24/7 rather than pay for matches.
And welcome to World Economics 101. That's hilarious. Oh my God. Wow. Yeah. Well, okay. We really didn't answer the question, which is okay.
And we don't know the answer. I mean, I think we're just going to have to wait and see.
There are some benchmarks, and we have mentioned them. And so keep an eye out for the Supreme Court decisions. See if the Trump administration openly defies court orders. Mm-hmm. That's really going to be the crux. That's what you have to watch out for. And especially when the Supreme Court...
It's going to be these domestic things. I mean, whatever you think of his international stuff, that's not really germane to this issue. I mean, there's behavior. The behavior is crazy, like demanding that Ukraine turn over half of its rare earth minerals in perpetuity to the United States. It's like, I thought the U.S. was Ukraine's ally. It's like,
not so much
Putin's
anymore.
Not asking for that,
Not so much anymore. So is it 1933? We're only 1 month into it, folks. We still have many more to go. If that is indeed the case, look for these movements. Look for this. And the omnibus bill coming forward, which will be introduced probably within the next, I would guess, the next month and a half, 2 months. That, again, is going to be the test. So you have two really key litmus tests as to whether or not this is 1933. If they both go the way they could go, then yeah, it's 1933, folks.
Does that omnibus pass? Is that omnibus? Can it pass with a simple majority in the Senate, or does it need a?
Yeah, it's a bill.
Majority?
It's a bill.
Okay.
So yeah, it doesn't need. Yeah, the Democrats. And
so
the
then all eyes turn to Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins.
Right.
The supposedly,
and a handful of others, because
supposedly moderate Republicans who always vote just along with MAGA anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be, because it's going to be so overwhelming, so sweeping, probably unconstitutional in many aspects of it. But we're going to have to wait and read, the proof, as they say, is in the pudding. We're going to have to see where this bill goes and what exactly is in it. But from what we're hearing, it's we've never seen anything like it in our lifetimes, Ted. Nothing even remotely like it. It will touch every aspect of your life and every aspect of the political and administrative life of our government. So
yeah, I think
stay
that's
tuned.
A good place to end. All right, so bring us out and let's talk and sing and whatever. Let's do that. Here we go.
Be joyful.
All right. And everybody, read our cartoons and our other crap. All right.
Yeah, go to gocomics.com. See Ted's work there, my work there.
Center clip. See Scott's clips. Listen to mine.
And your clips. And Ted and I both, they're short little podcasts, 30 seconds, no longer than 5 minutes. And I really do enjoy them. I really do. Because you can just get out there fast, unpolished. Although Ted apparently has trouble with the Friday, we have the winners and losers. And I take the time to make lists and stuff. And Ted hates that.
That's because I don't think anyone loses. Everyone gets an achievement, a participation trophy.
Everyone's a winner.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
The wrong one.
Again?
There we go.
Where do your allegiances lie, Ted? Have you no sense of decency?
We need music. We need music. We should do music. We'll find music. All right.
Music.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Ciao. Keep it real, as the kids said back in 1990.